Well, hello, St. Thomas. Welcome to version 3 of the COVID update between George and I. We're moving into a different time of year. So as you have probably noticed, the leaves are changing, the temperatures are going down, and that's going to require us to make a few changes and also just think about how we're doing things as a community and what we're doing for worship and other small gatherings and things like that. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that and about a few other things that we're going to start with. George is going to give us a little update about kind of what's going on in the community at large around COVID and the flu and other things to kind of think about. So George, why don't you go ahead and fill us in?
Sure. Thank you. There's still a lot of talk in the media, a lot of talk on various social outlets about what's going on with COVID in the community. In Johnson County in particular, they've changed a little bit of the methodology by how they're counting and tracking test positivity rates. And there's some good reasons behind it. It's allowing them to look at resource utilization a little differently. And I think the overall message in that is that we're probably in a better place than we were a month or two ago, but we're certainly not out of the woods. I mean, we know that we have a current quarantine that's involving 2 of the schools in Olathe. We have, other positive cases being reported in other parts of Johnson County. And as school attendance continues to do its thing and people are trying to have some sense of normalcy in the community, there's still that risk of things being spread. Our neighbors in Wyandotte County still have really high double-digit test positivity rates. And that's just a concern because we live in a large metro area. And so, a lot of people commute and travel and frequent places of businesses in various parts of the 4-county metro. And so it's important to look at Johnson County because it's where most of us live and most of us spend the majority of our time. But we can't just look at it in isolation in terms of the context. So we're certainly not out of the woods, and it's only going to get a little more complicated as we move into the wintertime, influenza and other winter virus season. But we're also not in a place where we need to be panicked. We're in a place where we have the ability to make some considerations for what to do as the weather is changing.
So what are some things, like you're a physician, you obviously have your thoughts and all your work around public health. What are some things people can be doing right now to protect themselves? And what are some new things they should be doing?
Yeah. So number 1, wash your hands. Number 2, wash your hands. Number 3, wash your hands. You can't do it, you can't lose anything by that. And it's probably the most helpful thing to do. And if you don't have hand sanitizer easily available, remember soap and water is just as good. But especially when you are going into a place of business or some other public area, if you've got hand sanitizer, that's awesome to use. So wash your hands. Second, keep wearing a mask. Masks work. Even as we continue to learn more about how the virus is transmitted, we know that masks work. So they are really beneficial. And then, number 3, continue social distancing. It is really important. I dropped one of my kids off at school today for the PSAT, and I watched the kids queuing up at the door, and some of them were doing typical teenage stuff and bunched around each other and looking on their phones. But I was also impressed with the number of teenagers who chose to space themselves several feet apart from each other. And so I think that message is getting out there, and that's really smart. And then the 4th thing, which is I think what Gar was implying with what's new, is it's time to get a flu shot. And so most everybody can get a flu shot. There are a few medical reasons not to get a flu shot, but they're very few. They're safe. They are effective. They really do help. And we're anticipating the current modeling looks like the flu season is really going to get here probably around Thanksgiving, maybe just a little before, just a little bit after. And so there's still time. If you call your primary care physician's office, You can talk with the health department, and of course, a lot of retail pharmacies offer them as well, wherever you choose to, or your employer might offer it as well.
A lot of the hospitals are doing drive-in. You can look around online. There's places you can just go. You don't even have to have an appointment. Sometimes you just go and get a shot. It's not that you can find it if you really want to.
Yes, you can. You can. The demand is definitely up. I will say one of the things that we're seeing is that more places have ordered flu shots this year. More places are giving flu shots. That's kind of for some institutions that regularly order flu vaccine. It's been a little funny this year because more places are ordering it, which is a great problem to have. So take advantage of that and get a flu shot if at all possible. Make it possible. Go get a flu shot.
Yeah. So just some real practical things. So to sum up, wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Wear a mask. Socially distance. Get a flu shot. And just be cognizant of your area. And one thing I've heard from some friends, it's really important is you can also, let's say if you're going to go do something, like say you decide, you need to go out to eat, which is a riskier activity, you can always call the restaurant and ask them what their COVID protocols are ahead of time. And that actually does a couple things. One, it tells them that you're thinking about that. And then also it gives you some information about whether you feel like you could be safe or not, if you're choosing to do that. So.
And I just say on that, it's really amazing the number of places in town that are now doing delivery, doing curbside pickup, and not just restaurants, but all kinds of businesses. I would say, exactly to Gar's point, call because it does raise awareness, but also call so that you understand, so that you don't end up going to a place where you're expecting it to be curbside, and then you find you actually have to go in the building, and now you may not be as prepared to go into the building. So, be safe. Protect yourself.
So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is we have been preparing actually for about 5 months for the day when it wouldn't be nice enough to have service. We've been doing a lot of outdoor services. It's been fun in some ways. And, a lot of people have really taken advantage of those. But when it gets, this weekend, it's supposed to be in the 40s on Sunday morning. So I'm guessing a lot of people probably aren't going to want to go hang around outside and have church, so we've been kind of trying to get ready. So we're going to go over a couple things that we've done to get the church ready. First thing I'm going to talk about is that we took about half the chairs out of our sanctuary, and we've set up for social distancing. We're going to encourage people to think about the 8-foot rule, which is a little more than what you hear in society. And there's some reasons for that, but just to think about having 8 feet of distance between you and another person, unless they're in your household. In other words, unless you live with them. You can certainly sit next to a person that you live in the same home with, but having that 8 feet of distance. So we took out about half the chairs. So the rows are now about 9 feet apart from each other. We've made some extra space in the aisles. And when you come to church, you'll see a couple of ways that we'll have things set up so that you'll walk in one way and walk out another. And we'll try to make those instructions pretty clear. But that's one thing that we're doing. And we'll have rooms preset. So if you have a group that wants to have a meeting, a small group that wants to have a meeting in a parish hall, we'll have the room set up so that you're socially distanced in your seating. And we've actually measured to make sure that things are set up right. So we're going to that's one thing that we've done. Another thing we did is we did some work on our HVAC systems. So in our parish hall, we have fresh air handlers. So the way the room was designed, this was before any of this happened, it brings a certain amount of fresh air into the space. So that's one important thing that they have identified that can help keep a room safe. In the sanctuary and the offices, we added some UV lights to the HVAC, so not to the room. So you're not going to walk in and have UV lights on, so don't think that. But it's in the HVAC system. And then we also added something that adds what's called a hyperoxide, which puts a little something in the air that pulls pollutants and viruses and bacteria, sort of attracts it and then pulls it down. Neither one of those makes a sterile environment. So it's not like you walk in and you don't have to worry about it. All it does is it lowers the amount of things that are in the air some. And so we just felt like there's some other long-term benefits, and we'll write some articles about that later, because there's more benefits to having that than just around COVID. But those are a couple of things that we've done to kind of get ready. George, you want to talk about any of that?
Well, I think it's just important to understand that this is part of risk mitigation, right? We're trying to take as many steps as we can that build on top of each other in the hopes that it just makes it a safer environment to be in. And I think just to reemphasize one point that a lot of people don't always think about is sort of the wayfinding or the directional movement within a structure. We certainly do that here in the clinics where I work. You see it in other places, in the grocery stores. You see sort of one-way signs and things like that. But some people might sort of think at first that seems kind of silly, but when you think about it, what it does is it helps keep everybody moving in the same direction, so it prevents that sort of cross traffic and people getting right in each other's space. It's easier to space out when you're all flowing in the same direction. So I think our trying to do some of those same things, having a common entryway and a common exit point to allow that traffic to flow, staying socially distanced within that is going to be really important as one more element of mitigation.
And we'll have this in a video cleverly done, hopefully, but also mapped out. Basically, you'll enter by the Apostles' Garden, and you'll either turn over and go into the parish hall if you're doing a meeting there, or you'll walk into the sanctuary for services. And then when it's time to go, you'll come out the other side of the sanctuary door, and then you'll go out actually towards the Antioch exit. And at the Antioch entrance, you'll go out there, and you'll have to walk around to your car. That will just kind of keep us from intersecting and having too much kind of cross flow. It'll make sense when you're here, and if you have a mobility issue and you need to go out the handicap doors, it's not going to be an issue, but it's more just for the most of the crowd. Same thing with the parish hall. You would come in the Apostle Garden side, and then when it was time to go, you would head out to where the outdoor altar is, and you would go to your car that way, and that just kind of keeps us from crossing paths too much and things like that. Some other things is we're going to have, there's sort of three things about services that we can do. One is keeping the duration of the service limited and not too long. So the amount of time that you're together with other people is one piece of that puzzle. The second piece is limiting the number of people that can come to the service. So we're going to start with 25 for the numbers in the sanctuary. We actually can go a little higher than that, but we're going to start with that to see how we do. And then 15 people in Parish Hall 1 and 20 people in Parish Hall 2 and 3 combined. So if you have a small group meeting or something like that, you can meet in those rooms, but that's what we can do. And we found a really great spreadsheet that does all the calculations for us about how you figure it out. We used 8 feet circle around people. So, when you talk about socially distanced, it's not one direction, it's actually all the directions around you. And so those are the limits that we came up with. About 10% of our fire occupancy actually is what we came up with. So those are some things that we'll do. And then, when we're doing the services and things like that, we have to be careful about what we're doing in terms of singing and things like that. We're going to encourage you, if you decide to sing along, sing very quietly. Keep your masks on, socially distance. When we do communion, we'll do like we did out at the outdoor services. We'll bring it to you. We'll be using tongs and be masked and freshly washed hands. All of those different things. So just trying to do a lot of stuff. So sort of to recap what we've talked about, we did, we set the rooms up to have socially distanced spaces, convenient. We're going to have entry and exit way pathways. We've done some work on our HVAC to try to make the atmosphere as safe as possible. And with lots of air circulation and things like that. That's another thing that's important in that. We're going to set a limited duration to the length of the service. We're going to limit the number of people that can come. And then we're going to practice all of the normal social distancing and mask wearing that we need to do. So when we start doing that, which we'll start this weekend because of the weather, you'll still need to sign up. We'll still have to do contact tracing. Nobody else sees the list except for Mary Beth and I, but we do need you to sign up ahead of time. That just tells us who's here. So if we ever had an exposure, we'd be able to contact everybody easily. So you have anything to add to that, George?
I just think this is really exciting to think about being able to add another level. I think it goes without saying, we have to thank Gar and Kelly and the entire church staff, Fran in her role as the deacon, the musicians of St. Thomas, the readers. It's amazing what we've been able to do in terms of online worship. I mean, the number of pieces of the liturgy, the number of songs that have been recorded are just immense. And it's such a treasure trove to have as a library. But now to start to think about how to add a little bit back into that is really going to be an amazing thing to have. And this is another step. We're not taking giant leaps. We're taking very measured steps that allows us to stay in control. It allows us to adjust. If something doesn't go right, we can manage it very quickly. And it also lets us learn good lessons. And if things go well, then we can continue to do more with time. So I really appreciate everybody's support, and I'm excited that this is sort of the next step. I think we're doing it safely. I think we're doing it smartly, and I just will appreciate everybody's continued prayers and patience as we move along.
So one thing I want to say is we will still do prepared, high quality online worship. So that will continue at the times that we have. We'll still have a service at 5:30 and 9 a.m. every Sunday, like what we've done with choir anthems and with a sermon and with the liturgy and all of that. So that will be there every week. So that's not going to change. And the reason for that is not everybody is going to want to come to church yet. And also not everybody should come to church. Because there are some things that you really should limit yourself in terms of the crowds that you're around. George, can you kind of go over those? There's 5 or 6 criteria just to be thinking about that. If you're choosing to come to church, and you need to really sort of consider this, whether you're willing to take that risk or not. So.
Yeah, and this is the difficult part, right? Is because this virus does not discriminate, and yet not everyone is equal in terms of the risk. So we certainly know that the older any of us are, the more risk we tend to stand from a COVID-19 infection. But on top of that, we know that pre-existing health conditions, so especially if you are immunocompromised, if you're currently undergoing some type of cancer treatment or other medical treatment that might hit your immune system, if you have pre-existing, heart or lung disease, those types of things all dramatically increase your risk. And there are others, and the CDC is reputable in terms of what those risk factors are. Johnson County Health Department has listed that. Most of the major medical centers have public-facing websites that have that kind of information, so you can go to any one of those as well. And I think it's it's not just you. It might be who you live with or who you have frequent contact with, and all of those types of things need to factor in. The last thing we want to do is unnecessarily expose one of our church family to something that is really life-threatening. That's just antithetical to what we would want to do. And so it is very important that even as we talk about, here are all the things we're doing to mitigate risk, here's how excited we are to be able to add this to our list of offerings. Please do not interpret that as a judgment to say, we expect you to start doing this. What we expect is to continue to demonstrate love for each other. and what we want is to have opportunities that people feel comfortable in utilizing to deepen their worship experience. So please understand that we're not tallying check marks in terms of attendance or things like that. If it's right for you, wonderful. And if it's right for you and your family to stay at home and keep enjoying online on-demand worship with a cup of coffee in your hand and even in your PJs, that's fantastic too.
So like I said, I think we'll continue to have robust offerings. So a lot of people have been really concerned, it's too much work and things like that. It's not too much work. It's what we need to do right now. It's how we minister to each other. And so there'll be good, high quality offerings both online, and then we'll also sort of ease into some in-person things. like we said, starting this weekend with 25 people at a time. We're going to start with 2 services on the weekend. We'll do something at 5:30 on Saturday and 11 o'clock on Sunday. That gives us time to do some cleaning in between, make sure the hard surfaces are wiped down, some different things like that. So we're going to slowly build into this to make sure we're not overwhelming each other or the system in terms of what we're doing. So there's going to be other new opportunities coming up. We've got some outreach plans coming in November, tied in with our stewardship. We have some plans for Advent. We just finished planning for Christmas. And we've got some new offerings that'll come and ways to engage people. And so it's kind of, it's making all of us here at St. Thomas be really creative. And we're going to try to encourage you to participate in lots of different ways. And so, it's been one of the most interesting periods in my ministry, I'm not going to lie. And one of the most challenging. I'm really grateful to our vestry and to our staff, to George and Bruce and all of our leadership as we continue to just sort of think through, pray about, and consider what it means to be community, to be the body of Christ, to be a church in a very, very difficult time. But there's no real choice to not do that. So, I mean, we're just going to do what we got to do. And sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. So I think that's all I have for today. George, you got anything else?
No, I think that covers it. Just continue to be safe, continue to take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and throw a couple extra prayers in with Compline, and we look forward to continuing to worship together and hopefully getting back to to future opportunities to be together to do that, but in a safe and smart way.
Thanks everybody for your time. You're probably watching this from an email that got sent out, so there's a lot of text below it, so you can read more about what we're doing. Obviously, if you have questions, let us know, and we hope to see you at worship, either in person or online or in some other way. Have a great day.